Being chill is the most exhausting performance of your life. On the surface, you are the perfect partner. You never double text. You never ask where the relationship is going. You never complain when plans change at the last minute. You smile and say you are fine with whatever. Your friends might even admire how relaxed you are in your relationships. But inside, you are not relaxed. Inside, you are counting the minutes until they reply. You are overanalyzing every shift in their tone. You are suppressing a tidal wave of needs because you have convinced yourself of one dangerous lie. You believe that having needs makes you needy, and being needy makes you unlovable. This is what we call the cool girl syndrome, or more clinically, high-functioning anxious attachment. It is a specific pattern where a person with deep fears of abandonment learns to mask those fears with a facade of extreme independence. Unlike the classic anxious attachment style, which might manifest as clinging, calling incessantly, or demanding reassurance, the high-functioning anxious person does the opposite. You turn the anxiety inward. You implode rather than explode. You perform security so well that you often convince your partner that you require nothing, while silently resenting them for giving you exactly what you asked for. We need to understand the difference between being truly secure and performing security. True security is a state of regulation. When a secure person says they are fine with a plan change, they actually feel fine. Their nervous system remains calm. They do not feel a spike of cortisol or a drop in self-worth. If they are disappointed, they say so, and then they move on. There is a match between their internal reality and their external presentation. The high-functioning anxious person, however, is operating out of suppression, not regulation. Suppression is an active, energy-intensive process. It is the act of shoving an emotion down into the body to prevent it from showing on the face. When your partner cancels a date, your heart might race, your stomach might drop, and your mind might spiral into stories of rejection. But outwardly, you send a text that says, "No worries, have fun." You are overriding your survival instinct to protect the connection. This is why you feel so tired after spending time with your partner. You have been holding your breath the entire time. This pattern often stems from a childhood dynamic where having needs was viewed as a burden. Perhaps you were praised for being the easy child. Perhaps you had a parent who was emotionally fragile, and you learned that expressing your own distress would overwhelm them. You learned that to be loved, you had to be low maintenance. You internalize the idea that love is conditional on your ability to be convenient. As an adult, this translates into a terror of being too much. You believe that if you show the crack in your armor, if you admit that you need reassurance or consistency, the other person will leave. The tragedy of this dynamic is that it works, but only in the short term. It works to get you into relationships, often with avoidant partners. People with an avoidant attachment style are drawn to independence. They are terrified of being engulfed or controlled. When they meet you, and you seem to have no demands and no heavy emotions, they feel safe. They think they have found the perfect match. They fall in love with your mask. But because they fall in love with the mask, you never feel truly seen. You spend the relationship waiting for the other shoe to drop, convinced that if they saw the real, anxious you, the relationship would end. One of the most damaging consequences of this pattern is self-abandonment. To keep the peace, you slowly erode your own identity. You become a chameleon. You adopt their hobbies, their schedule, and their preferences. You stop voicing your opinion on small things like where to eat for dinner because you want to be flexible. You tell yourself that you don't care, that you are just going with the flow. But every time you say, "I don't mind," when you actually do mind, you are sending a signal to your own brain that your needs do not matter. Over time, this creates a profound sense of invisibility. You are safe, but you are not real. This self-abandonment inevitably leads to the resentment loop. This is the silent killer of relationships involving a high-functioning anxious partner. Because you are working so hard to anticipate their needs and suppress your own, you secretly expect them to do the same for you. You expect them to mind read. You think, "I never ask for anything, so if he really loved me, he would notice that I am struggling." You wait for them to volunteer the reassurance you are too afraid to ask for. When they fail to mind read, because they are not psychic, and because you have spent months telling them you are fine, you feel betrayed. You feel that the relationship is unfair. You are giving 100% of your emotional labor, and they are just coasting. But from their perspective, everything is great. They have no idea you are suffering because you have curated a perfect image of contentment. You are waiting for them to pay a bill you have never sent them. Eventually, this resentment builds until it leaks out, often in passive-aggressive comments or a sudden, confusing breakup. Another layer to this dynamic is the fear of conflict. For the high-functioning anxious person, conflict feels like a precursor to abandonment. You avoid it at all costs. You swallow your anger. You rationalize their bad behavior. You tell yourself that bringing up an issue will make you sound nagging or crazy. You might even pride yourself on being the girl who never fights.
But a relationship without conflict is usually a relationship without intimacy. Conflict is how we negotiate differences. It is how we assert our boundaries. By avoiding conflict, you are avoiding the friction necessary to deepen the bond. You are keeping the relationship smooth but superficial. It is also important to address the misconception that being low maintenance is a virtue. Humans are not appliances. We are not meant to be low maintenance. We are high maintenance. We require attention, care, consistency, safety, and reassurance. These are biological imperatives. When you try to deny these needs, you are fighting your own biology. The goal of a healthy relationship is not to need nothing. The goal is to find a partner who is happy to meet your needs, but they cannot meet needs they do not know exist. Breaking this pattern requires a terrifying leap of faith. It requires you to dismantle the cool girl persona and risk being seen as uncool. It starts with recognizing that your anxiety is not a defect, it is information. It is telling you that you need safety. Instead of suppressing that signal, you need to learn to regulate it and then communicate it. The transition from suppression to expression must happen slowly. If you have spent years being the easygoing partner, suddenly presenting a list of demands will be shocking to your dynamic. You want to start with what we call micro-preferences. This is a safe practice to begin reclaiming your voice. Start with low-stakes situations. If your partner asks what you want for dinner, do not say, "I don't care." Check in with yourself. Do you want Italian? Do you hate sushi? Say it. "I'd actually prefer Italian tonight." This sounds trivial, but for the high-functioning anxious person, having a preference feels dangerous. You are training your nervous system that you can state a desire and the relationship will survive. You are testing the hypothesis that you are only loved for your compliance. When you express a preference and your partner simply says, "Okay," you rewrite a small piece of your trauma script. You learn that your opinion does not cause abandonment. Once you are comfortable with preferences, you can move to expressing vulnerability without demands. This is the antidote to the mind-reading trap. Instead of acting cool when you are anxious, try a soft admission. You might say, "I'm feeling a bit anxious about us today, and I just needed to say it out loud." Notice that you are not blaming them. You are not saying, "You made me anxious because you didn't text." You are owning the feeling. This type of vulnerability is disarming. It invites the partner to comfort you rather than forcing them to defend themselves. It shows them the real you, the human, imperfect, slightly anxious you. If they are a secure or loving partner, they will likely respond with reassurance. If they are an avoidant partner who creates distance the moment you show a need, that is painful information, but it is necessary information. You cannot build a secure relationship with someone who requires you to be invisible. You also need to practice distinguishing between a boundary and a wall. The cool girl persona is a wall. It keeps people out. It keeps you perfect and untouched. A boundary is different. A boundary defines where you end and they begin. It might look like saying, "I can't hang out tonight, I need some rest," instead of forcing yourself to go over because you are afraid they will be bored without you. It might look like saying, "I'm not comfortable with that joke," instead of laughing along to be a good sport. Recovering from this syndrome is fundamentally about acceptance. You have to accept that you might never be the chill, breezy partner who is unaffected by emotional distance, and that is okay. You might be sensitive, you might need clarity, you might need words of affirmation.
These are not crimes. These are the price of admission to your heart. When you stop performing coolness, you stop attracting people who are looking for a prop. You start attracting people who are looking for a person. A real connection can only exist between two real people. As long as you are pretending to be someone else, you are preventing the very intimacy you are so desperate for. You are lonely because the person they love is a character you created, not the person who is listening to this video. Real safety comes from being known. It comes from showing your messy, anxious, complex self and having someone stay. It does not come from tricking someone into staying by pretending you have no needs. The right partner will not be scared away by your needs. They will want to know how to love you better. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be difficult. You are allowed to be human. Intimacy is not a performance. It is a collision, and you cannot collide if you are not there.